Well, Principal, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview with us today. We really appreciate your time. To my left, I've got Ollie Coombs, who's our Vice President for Education, and Louise Graham, who's our Vice President for Student Support. And each of us are going to ask you a few questions. So, Ollie, do you want to start?
Yeah. So, obviously, this year there's been a series of strikes. And I think you may have seen the sort of statements that we've released, and on the whole have been quite supportive of staff. But we do have potentially a marking boycott coming up. So we just wanted to ask you kind of what has the senior management done to sort of hopefully support our staff at a national level?
Yeah, first of all, it's a very serious situation, clearly, and we have a responsibility and duty to our students to make sure that, especially those graduating, that we can finish the assessments on time. As you probably know, it's national bargaining that we have, and indeed both the unions and the university are committed to national bargaining, so we have a national framework with all employers bargaining through UCEA, which is the Employers Association. What I have done and others have done is to encourage UCEA very much to try and push forward, certainly on next year's pay round, because as you probably know, the employers have said very clearly that last year's round is finished. But I think on both sides there's a willingness to see whether on the back of a good offer for next round there might be a decision to step back from the boycott. So that's what we're very much pushing now. There are still discussions to happen ahead of the marking season, the examination and marking season. So we're still hopeful that it might be resolved, and what we're doing on our side is continuing to push UCEA for a realistic offer that might lead to hopefully a resolution.
Okay, great, thank you.
Obviously we've got big developments coming up with the campus over the next few years, and I was wondering if you could talk about what you think the university's priorities should be with regards to the estate moving into the future.
Well, I think it's without doubt we need to put quite a bit of priority on both teaching and learning space, and indeed social space in the new campus. We've grown as a university, as you'll have noticed over the last few years, which has been great. We've actually got a very bustling and thriving community, very international community of students, but I think there's no doubt that the campus is very busy at the moment. So from my point of view, certainly providing teaching space is going to be important, especially for large classes. There's a large pressure on medium to large size lecture theatres, but also the social space the students need on campus. I think it's a fantastic opportunity because we have a chance to reimagine not just that bit of the campus, that's the Western Infirmary, but the whole campus. So we have a real opportunity to start from scratch and say, where do we want to have a teaching social hub, for instance? So to me, that is a big priority. Clearly, there are other priorities as well. There are a number of research themes that we have to push. We're ahead of the game in so many areas across the university. We need to make sure that we provide our researchers with the facilities that will encourage them to stay in Glasgow. But clearly, from the student perspective, teaching and social hubs are going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. And obviously we're already seeing the pressure on campus in terms of space, and the developments that are going to take place are going to happen over a number of years.
Yes.
What kind of strategy is in place in the shorter term to make sure that we manage?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I mean we don't have access to the new site until 2015. The main strategies we followed in the very short term is actually to convert some spaces that were underutilised, like committee rooms and large spaces like the Bute Hall and the Hunter Halls to teaching, but it's not an ideal solution. The other thing which we've been trying to think about is whether there are any administrative functions that we can move off campus. To some extent we've been very lucky here. We've had everything on campus, and that's the way we want to keep it. We want to be a campus university, but in the short term there would be nothing wrong with moving a number of administrative services off campus if they're not student facing or service facing, and then free up that space for if we're hiring more staff, which we will be if we want to continue to expand student numbers. We will need to hire more staff, so we need space for that. So we want to keep our academic schools and institutes here on campus, but perhaps see whether we can rent some space off campus.
Thank you.
Yeah, so recently the SRC have been campaigning against the immigration bill. We're wondering what your thoughts were on the bill.
Well, I mean, I share your views about the immigration bill. It's certainly been, I think, the whole. I think it's not just the bill; it's the whole development. I don't know if you saw. There was an article in The Economist, I think, over the last week, which I think put it very nicely. You know, how to ruin the world brand. Now, it's what I'm talking about English universities, but frankly, of course, immigration affects all of UK universities. It's not the precise some of the elements in the immigration bill. It's more the signal it sends as well. You know, certainly having travelled to a number of parts of the world, India, for example, the whole sub-Asian continent. I think you begin to see how people have perceived what the UK has been doing in the immigration space so negatively. So it's more the signal it sends than anything else. Some of the measures, of course, within the bill are I think, detrimental as well. But I think it just says close for business or, you know, close for education, don't come here. And it's exactly the opposite message that a number of other countries are sending, including the US and Canada and Australia. And I don't think we should be there, frankly, as a country.
Do you think it will affect our student numbers?
At the moment, where we have seen an impact has been, as I said, particularly from countries like India and in one or two other countries. Glasgow has managed to grow despite what's been happening in that immigration space. I'm confident that we can continue to do that, partly because we offer some very good courses. I think we offer a very good student experience here in Glasgow, but clearly we can't predict with absolute accuracy. So far, our applications are actually up from international students, which is great, but I think at the end of the day we need to see how many choose actually to come here, but I'm quite positive.
Okay, thanks very much.
So one of the biggest developments in higher education, of course, is e-learning, and we were just kind of wondering, and there's a lot of work that we need to do in terms of it as well, but where is the future of the university's e-learning strategy? Where do you see the university in terms of e-learning?
I think it's a very exciting time. I think if anybody had a crystal ball, they'd probably make quite a lot of money out of this in the long run in terms of technology development. I don't think we know exactly where e-learning is going, but the university has committed to spend 2.4 million over the next 2-3 years on e-learning. We've started off with MOOCs. I think, like a lot of people, I don't think MOOCs are quite what they're blown up to be as the ultimate sort of in learning. But I think they're a really interesting shop window for a university. And I think we decided to get involved with MOOCs partly because we think we can learn from that in terms of the actual credit-bearing e-learning facilities that we may want to develop. So as part of the e-learning strategy, we'll be hopefully developing both fully online and blended learning courses over the next few years. I think students who are already here on campus doing face-to-face courses will benefit because the whole approach we're going to take is that some of these modules can then be accessed also by students who are currently on campus as well. So I think it's of mutual benefit, but it will allow us to attract students who otherwise wouldn't come to the university. And so that's the approach we're taking. In the short run, you'll see some MOOCs appearing with the University of Glasgow brand. Over the next year or two, you'll actually begin to see some credit-bearing online courses, and we've just opened up a sort of internal. I don't want to call it a competition because this is the competition. It's really we've written around to schools and institutes saying, what do you want to offer in this space? We're investing as a university, and we'll see what comes back from that.
Yeah. It's certainly interesting is the right word, and it offers significant challenges to ourselves in terms of how do we have a representation structure within students who are maybe learning in Mexico.
Well, I mean, and presumably other universities have already faced that.
Of course.
And it'll be interesting to see what others have done in this space. Yes.
Okay. Recently, we've had a number of appointments to senior management, and I believe all 4 this year have been white men. We're wondering what's being done to encourage other members of staff to apply for these jobs and progress up the ladder.
Well, I think it's hugely important to look at diversity, not only at senior management but throughout the institution. I mean, as you know, we've, in terms of gender representation, we've the whole gender space we've looked at. We've got institutional accreditation, bronze accreditation from Athena Swan. A number of schools have now either progressed to silver or are progressing to silver. and we're hoping to do more. The other thing which we've been looking at as part of senior management, and Anne Anderson is, as the gender champion, has been leading this, has been to try and raise ambition, especially amongst our senior female academics, in terms of applying for these positions. At the end of the day, we've got to appoint the best person for the job. As it happened in most of the appointments you refer to, actually we did have both male and female applicants. But I appreciate what you say. It's not a very diverse group at the moment, and it's something that we need to work on for the future.
Do you think this has any effect on the student experience?
That's an interesting question. I think ultimately it might, insofar as it's about the culture that we set as a university and in the interactions that senior management have. But I'll say one more thing, which I think is important. I mean, although we have a senior management group, which is a small number of people, that's not the way I tend to run senior management meetings. I tend to have a lot of people involved who are heads of services or heads of schools or are invited to come along. So actually, if you were to look at the senior management table on any particular meeting day, it looks rather more diverse than perhaps a senior management composition would suggest. So I think, absolutely, I think it does affect the student experience. I think it has to be reflective. What we have in terms of university structures, both in terms of academic and service staff, has to reflect the student community. And it's less diverse than the student community, I think, at the moment.
Thanks very much.
Just a final question then on, you may be aware that the SRC has recently been petitioning the university to divest from fossil fuel industry, and I was wondering whether you thought that the university should divest or not.
Well, I'm gonna take the fifth at the beginning, because, as you know, there is a working group which has been set up, which has both student, staff, and external lay representatives on it to consider your representation, and it'll be interesting to see what comes back to court. So clearly, I don't want to preempt court's position on this. I think it clearly is an important issue. I think it's going to be a more complicated one than some of the other sectoral concerns, partly because I think two things I would say for a start. One, we still use fossil fuels, and it's going to be difficult to completely get rid of fossil fuels, even in a more diversified energy economy. So that's one issue. And the other issue, which I think is important to me and will be important, I think, also to you as a court member and others, will be how can we do something in this space, whether it's fossil fuels or something else or some other area that we feel strongly about, whilst at the same time retaining the financial returns that are going to, because most of these endowments that we invest in are for scholarships, and so we don't want to clearly damage what we do for students in terms of scholarship returns. But it's a really interesting development. It'll be interesting to see what the working group brings to court. Yeah,
and of course the university is doing a lot at the moment with regards to trying to reduce its carbon footprint with the CHP project that's ongoing as well, which is really good.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think that's one of the questions. You know, what can we do in a variety of spaces, not just the investment space, but also, I mean, I think CHP is going to be really important. You know, you're absolutely right.
Okay, thanks very much for your time again.
Thank you very much, and thanks Jess, Ollie and Louise. And it's been good to have this, and hopefully we can have some more of these dialogues in the future.
Sounds good.